Were you surprised to see Netflix come out the winner here?
Yeah, I think it was a little surprising. I mean, I think at the start of all this, Paramount kicked off this sale by making an unsolicited bid for Warner Brothers Discovery and for the whole company, right? And they rejected 3 bids, opened it up for sale. Along came Netflix and Comcast saying we'd like part of the business, not the whole thing. But I think, in spite of Netflix's strength in Hollywood, I think people were thinking, well, they only want part of it. David Ellison, just finished this deal to combine Skydance with Paramount. His father, Larry Ellison, the co-founder of Oracle, has an enormous amount of money to back the deal. So I think a lot of people thought that the Ellisons were going to be able to pull this off, and we're surprised that Netflix was able to do it.
Well, the Ellisons might still be able to pull this off because there are reports that Paramount Skydance is considering taking its offer straight to Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders. So it's not quite over yet.
Yeah, we're all waiting the next move from the Ellisons. And they signaled some displeasure yesterday in a letter to Warner Brothers saying that they felt the process had not been fair and that, sort of laying the framework for potentially going hostile.
And they bid a higher price than Netflix did too, right?
It depends. It was kind of apples to oranges, right? Because they weren't bidding for the same thing. Netflix was bidding for part of the company, and Paramount Skydance was bidding for the whole thing.
But part of the company, they were still going to offer even more for part of the company than Paramount was going to give for the whole company. Is that right?
It depends how you value the part of the company that Netflix is not acquiring, which is all of those legacy cable networks.
Well, let's talk about it since you wrote the book on HBO. Yeah. What would let's just say, for instance, this deal goes through, Netflix, Warner Brothers, Discovery. What happens to CNN, TNT, TBS, HBO?
They'll all be spun off into a standalone company, and that's going to be, it's a declining asset, but it still throws off a lot of cash. Will it be eventually potentially combined with some of the other cable networks that are now out there? It's conceivable that someone will come along and roll up what's left of all of the traditional legacy cable networks.
And I misspoke. HBO is not part of that. That would be CNN, the cable.
Right.
The cable entities.
Cartoon Network, TBS, right. TNT, CNN. Yeah.
Felix, Netflix is the original disruptor. I mean, it kind of accelerated the cord cutting that we're seeing everywhere. Are we setting up for a major culture clash here by having a tech company buy a classic Hollywood studio?
Well, these deals always look great on paper, and then you start combining the assets, and often you do get culture clashes. And particularly with this company, with Warner Brothers Discovery, which was previously Warner Media, we're now 25 years into mega mergers for this company, starting with AOL Time Warner, which was one of the most disastrous, combinations in entertainment history. And then, then also the deal with AT&T buying the company later. And there was a huge culture clash there. Discovery coming along and combining assets with what remained of Warner Media also has been a turbulent ride. So yeah, part of the question is, why would this be different? And people ask that, analysts brought that up today on the phone call with Netflix executives. And what they said is, look, we're in the entertainment business. And they didn't bring up the other companies' names, but AOL was not in the entertainment business. They were a tech company, dial-up, access to the internet in the early days. And AT&T also had, basically no entertainment industry history.
I thought Netflix was a tech company. That's what they tell investors.
Yeah, I mean, and they, there's the famous quote of that Ted Sarandos said, early in the streaming wars, where they said, he said, we have to become HBO faster than HBO becomes us. And, I think if you look back at what's happened in the, dozen years since then, Netflix was able to master the skills of an entertainment company and how to develop original programming, how to build franchises, quicker than HBO was able to master the streaming technology and distributing in this post-cable era.
I think about the culture clash, and I think about how Amazon bought MGM for $8.5 billion. And you don't hear about MGM anymore. It's kind of like it's lost its identity.
I can't imagine that would happen with Warner Brothers. But, I mean, could it? Does Netflix just become so big it overshadows these legacy brands?
Yeah, I think there's some serious questions about how these are going to fit together. And people ask today, like, what is, what's the plan? Like, is HBO going to be a standalone streaming service? Is it going to be integrated? Is it going to be like a tab on Netflix? And they said, well, hold up. We have basically a year to 18 months to figure out these questions. We're still ourselves kind of figuring out how they're going to fit together, but they see them as complementary services, complementary brands. And I think it's interesting when you think back about the past year, because in a sense, this was something that executives at Warner Brothers Discovery also came to this conclusion in the past year. They'd spent the past couple of years saying, oh, we're going to build this giant streaming service with assets from Discovery plus assets from Warner Brothers to build a Netflix competitor. And they weren't able to catch up to Netflix in a meaningful way in terms of subscribers and in terms of the amount of time people spend on the service. And eventually, in the past 6 months, they started saying, you know what, we kind of see Netflix as a utility. Everyone has Netflix, and there's a bunch of other complementary streaming services, of which HBO Max is one. And so we're not going to try and offer everything. So in some ways, there is, other people kind of saw this come in. Maybe there's some world in which if you already have Netflix, do you buy the HBO add-on in the future from Netflix to see the next season of Game
another
of Thrones or
bundle
something.
choice is what we may have.
More bundling.